Bainbridge Asylum is looking to hire a new director. Applicants beware. Part 3. Part 1 link, Part 2 link, Part 3, Part 4 link, final link. Patient Alicia Barnes. I'm Alicia Barnes. I'm not supposed to be here. You know. They put me in here because I'm a witch. But stake burning is no longer allowed. Sure. I've killed a few men. But it was only because I needed their body parts for my spells. So sue me or whatever. And those kids at the park had to die because they got a particular ritual wrong. Their souls had become corrupted and they would have slaughtered the whole city. I know I'm into some dark shit. But that doesn't mean I want to be the cause of the world's demise. It wasn't my fault that those idiots didn't follow my instructions to the letter. But I was the one to introduce them to the ritual. So their killing spree would have been on me. So. Yeah. You're welcome. If I had let that group live, you would probably be dead now. So. The story is that our esteemed director has decided to resign. Right. That's a load of bull. I have it on good authority that he's still here at Bainbridge Asylum. You know. The one thing that really used to grind my gears about this place was that someone like me had to languish here under the label of insanity, while someone like him got to run the place. Do you have any idea what kinds of dark stuff that guy was into? I'm willing to bet he murdered a lot more people than I ever have. That's the only way you reach the depths of depraved power he had reached. Well. Now it's not so bad since he's stuck here now as much as am. Maybe even more so. I heard he got his very own secret room on the C ward. Serves him right. You're probably wondering why I don't witch my way out of this place. Right. Well. Bainbridge is a pretty magical place and has its own rules that need to be followed. Before I got locked up here, I had actually become well versed on the lore that surrounds the asylum. I loved hunting down places with dark histories. And this asylum was close to where I lived. So naturally I learned a lot about it. Are you aware that Bainbridge is built right on top of the site of the Brisbane massacre? Over 200 people dead and buried right under our feet. Look it up, it's a fascinating story. The original founders of the asylum were said to have been a group of necromancers who were building a school here dedicated to furthering their research on raising the dead. Okay. I know that's not what the official history states about them. But I look to more truthful sources for my information. Anyway. The design of this building follows a set of rules that governs the behavior of the magic here. Admittedly. I have not quite figured out how all of it works yet. The master I serve is not allowed to assist me in my endeavors to discover the inner workings of Bainbridge's power. The energies expressed here are downright perplexing. And often more dangerous than I'm used to handling. I somehow don't think that the original founders accomplished whatever it was that they were trying to achieve. It's like they omitted something important. Or they mistranslated an important ritual from one of the old texts. It seems like they unintentionally created a powerful, malevolent, intelligent, but confused beast when they built Bainbridge. Now no one can control it or figure it out. Just ask the last director. I suppose I'll go on and tell you about my near-death experience here. It has been labeled a suicide attempt. Of course. But I can tell you that I've never been suicidal in my life. Believe me. I know where my master comes from. I'm in no hurry to get there. And though my master won't outright confirm my suspicions, I fear that if I die in this asylum, I won't get to leave. My own energy will just become another awful part of this place. And that's not something I'm overly eager to face. Nothing in my life is so bad that I'm willing to forfeit it for any afterlife I can imagine for myself. I used to really enjoy exploring Bainbridge at night. This building is a secretive place. But at night it lets its hair down and allows itself to really be seen by those who are inclined to look. Yes. I have my ways of getting out of my room at night. No. I'm not going to reveal them. Just know that walls and doors are a lot more porous than they appear. And that I haven't yet met a room that can hold me or keep me out if I have a mind to exit or enter. Unfortunately. Many of the entities that exist within these walls can boast of the same prowess. So escaping unwanted visitors can be a tricky thing. That wasn't too much of a problem for me. Until I almost got myself killed. That night, I decided to explore a walled-off section of the A ward that most people don't know about. According to dark historians, this area is known as the Rush. Thanks to some confused bit of magic, time runs more quickly than usual in there. And I don't mean just the time on your watch would be speeding by. Everything moves as if on permanent fast forward. Like something is rushing to get everything to where it's going. It's a very strange phenomenon to think about, let alone to experience. I thought it would be the coolest thing to check out for myself. But it never occurred to me that something might live there. I truly regret having opened that can of worms. As it turns out, the Rush isn't really that impressive when you're in it. 2. An outside observer. It would look amazing. But for the person inside the Rush, everything appears to be normal. Because everything is moving at an increased speed, including your thoughts. Nothing seems to be moving differently. That realization was a bit of a letdown for me. But it was still neat to feel the unique energy of the place and to discover all of the things that had been left behind in the haste to cover it up. Surprisingly, there wasn't much dust or any real signs of decay about the area. And not a single bug or cobweb to be seen. A few sounds of scurrying alerted me to the presence of mice or rats within the walls. But I didn't notice droppings anywhere. The floors in this area looked like some kind of off-white linoleum. Unlike the pink and baby blue vinyl tile currently used by the rest of the asylum. Also, unlike the rest of the asylum, the doors to the rooms were made of a dark brown, heavy wood, instead of windows to look through. Each door had a small opening with a sliding barrier for observation. The doorknobs were old and wooden, with a keyhole resting beneath each one. None of the doors I tried were locked, which meant I could have a look around without having to waste energy on creative entering. I guess the ease of entering made me forget caution, as I never even bothered to look through the observation hole before opening a door. The first room I entered was furnished with a wooden bed frame that was bolted to the wall and a small wooden desk that was bolted to the floor. The walls were plastered with crayon drawings of flowers, rainbows, and an assortment of bugs and animals. On the desk sat a few professional-looking sketches of the very walls of the room with all of the drawings present. All the cutesy pictures on the walls made me gag. But I was rather fond of the sketches. I pocketed one to take with me and moved on to the next room. The only furniture present in the second room was a single wooden chair sitting in the room's center, facing away from the door. In the chair sat a large, orange and yellow teddy bear that looked like it was homemade. The fabric and pattern of its skin seemed consistent with what a woman might use for a summer dress. The one remaining button eye on its face was yellow and shaped like a flower. The nose was a black felt material, while the stitching that created its smile was brown. A syringe filled with a dark substance punctured the bear's face where the missing eye should have been. I could feel that the bear was very angry. So I picked it up and squeezed it against my chest, taking some of its burden into myself before returning it to its chair. I know, I'm such a sentimental fool sometimes. But the bear appreciated it and I left the room better than I found it. The third room was trouble. When I put my hand on the doorknob of that room, I felt something that should have at least gotten me to take a peek into the room before opening the door. It felt wrong. I don't know of any other way to describe it. If I had been anywhere else except for Bainbridge, that feeling would have caused me to walk away unless my master had made a specific request for me to bypass that decision. I think the overall strangeness of this asylum and its various energies has weakened my inhibitions to a degree. Or maybe I've just grown stupider over the years. Whatever the reason for my lack of caution, I opened the door to the third room and stepped right in. The first thing that grabbed my attention was the numbers on the walls. I mean, it almost seemed like the walls themselves were completely made of numbers. Numbers on top of numbers, big, small, different colors, even numbers in different languages. Some of them were so ornate that they wouldn't have looked out of place in an art museum. Others were crudely carved into the walls. Still others looked like ethereal caveman paintings. Even though I couldn't read all of them, it didn't take me long to understand that all of the numbers were odd. That didn't bode well in a place like this. So I quickly decided to take my leave. I actually might have left the room unscathed, except that I suddenly noticed that there was a fully intact bed on the right side of the room. And the bed was occupied. Sitting Indian style on the red duvet that covered the mattress was a young man that looked to be about my age. Which is to say, a little bit older than someone fresh out of college. Yeah. I know I look old for my age. It happens when you live a life like mine. Anyway, the guy didn't have a shirt on, but he was wearing what looked like white scrub bottoms. His flawlessly chiseled body might have been a real turn-on if his skin wasn't this awful grayish-blue color. His lips, nipples, fingernails, and toenails were tar black. He had no hair on any part of his body that was visible to me. His irises were a crystal clear blue, while the whites of his eyes were the bright red of arterial blood. Whoa. Who are you? I spat in surprise, without thinking about whether it was safe to start a conversation with this guy or not. Whoa. He croaked, leaning forward a little and cocking his head to the side. Who are you? His voice was soft and somewhat pleasant, but it sounded like he hadn't spoken in a long time and he might have been thirsty. I'm Aurea. I lied, giving him the name that I usually gave to supernatural entities I encountered. There is power in names, so you should never give your name away lightly. No, he said, sitting up straight and narrowing his eyes at me. That's one strike. Why have you come here? He probed. I paused for a moment, unsure of what game we might be playing here. I could sense that just leaving was no longer an option. Not now that I had his attention. I decided to just be honest for the moment, since I wasn't yet sure what kind of danger this entity represented. I was curious. I had heard about this area called the Rush, and I decided to do some exploring. Yes. He sighed. The Rush is my home. There is a wall that keeps out the living. How did you get in? I took a path hidden to most. Walls are no real barrier for me. I replied carefully. I'm sorry if my presence has disturbed your peace. Are you able to leave here? I wondered. That's another strike. He growled, baring his red teeth in anger. Your question is not valid. You may try another question, but it's probably not a good idea. His angry scowl transformed into a sly grin as his eyes traveled along the numbered walls before resting back on me. Are you odd or even? He asked. What? I sputtered. I don't understand the question. How can I be odd or even? At this point, I knew there was no way I was going to pass whatever test this was. So I started trying to calculate how quickly I could get from here to the other side of the wall that sealed the Rush away from the rest of Bainbridge. The panic rising in my chest made it difficult to think through all the steps needed to get out of there. You're a nervous little rabbit, aren't you? He chuckled. Don't worry, you're an odd number for sure. An even number couldn't have entered this room. The door would have been locked to you. That was, of course, your last strike. But fortunately for you, that means that you'll be able to stay here with me forever and always. Before I could react, the entity's hands shot across the room and wrapped themselves firmly around my neck. He never left his place upon his bed, nor did he change his seated position. His arms had merely extended as much as they needed to in order to close the distance between us. And now they began pulling to drag me over to him. There wasn't much time to think because we weren't a great distance away from each other, and because he wouldn't let me draw in a breath. I reached into my pocket and grabbed the little folding knife I keep on me when exploring the building. No, I won't tell you where I kept it stashed during the day. I dug my heels into the floor, trying to buy myself time while I geared up to do what was necessary. That little knife wasn't likely to even scratch the surface of the entity's skin. But my master had left me a way to protect myself under the most extreme circumstances. I would have to get in good and deep for it. Though, working as quickly as I could, I stabbed the knife into my left wrist and dragged it up my forearm, hoping beyond hope that it would be enough. Growing weaker by the second, I desperately beat my arm against his, splashing my blood all over him. Blessed air rushed into my lungs as the entity released me, his lengthened arms flailing about as he howled in pain. I fell to the floor, feeling dizzy and disoriented, but knowing that I would probably die if I stayed where I was for too much longer. I got to my feet and exited the room as quickly as I could, slamming the door shut behind me. The deafening roars chasing me out of the room spurred me on as I spent all that I had pushing myself toward the wall through which I needed to escape. I had almost reached the barrier, when the world around me faded into the black halls of unconsciousness. I'm still not sure about how I managed to get out of the rush. Apparently, one of the night patrols found me bleeding to death on the floor of one of the C ward corridors. Now, I live on E ward, the suicide ward. I don't mind it here. Honestly, I don't get to spend much time alone anymore, which I'm okay with. My nightly explorations are over. I happily take the sedatives offered to me and sleep like a normal person now. I'm sure the day might come when I feel comfortable enough to take on another adventure in the dark. But then again, maybe not. Bainbridge is just too powerful and too unpredictable. It just doesn't feel safe to explore anymore. Look, I know that you probably don't believe a word of what I just said. I mean, witches, and dark magic, and things that go bump in the night. Right. But you need to warn the next director. This place is not to be trifled with. Here, there be monsters. I had to damn near kill myself in order to save my own life. Bainbridge Asylum will devour you, digest you, and here you will stay. I must have said, "Oh, that's so sweet," at least 3 times when you were recounting the troubled bear-hugging room.